In today's Fun Fact Science Corner, an asteroid entering the Earth's atmosphere is now suspected to be a NASA rocket launched in 1966, aptly named Noah's Wrath. It was purportedly crafted by a time-traveling energy official who hoped to wipe the Earth of all ungodly impurities. Well, if you wanted honesty, you've come to the wrong place.
I was upset until he said that. Now I'm okay with it. Sure, fuck me all you want. I don't care. Baby on the rooftop. Thank you, Warren, because I like my Blu-rays.
This is the Disinformed podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
And we're happy to have you back as our impending doom barrels towards us like the president's cock at a prostitute. I'm sorry, sex worker.
Thank you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
I'll add a new instrument to the intro every week as we get closer and closer to midnight. Just like a doomsday clock of instrumentation on the intro music.
I think the doomsday cock is what we were going for, John.
A doomsday cock of instrumentation. It'll be penetrating your earlobes, mouth, and or genitals.
Any orifice you have available to be tooched, we shall tooch it.
We should really tiptoe around Michael. He's probably really sensitive after spending all this time in the South.
How's your banjo plucking skills there, my friend?
Oh, man, I tell you what, man. They pretty good. I'll tell you what.
I tell you what.
So, I now have Boomhauer over here.
That's honestly, anytime I try and affect and I try and do a southern accent, I just be Boomhauer. It's very lazy.
I had thought about this, and I bounced it off of Melissa, and that's not as tawdry as it sounds. But I had contemplated, since we enjoyed it so much, since we're going, to the Christian realms here for the School of Prayer and Miracles, we should, since you already somewhat teased John with the idea, we should make all the characters Southern. And this should be like, a weird plantation farm in America and just have everybody have a Southern accent. I mean, I already have Wilford Brimley in play. We have so many characters that are already borderline on Southern accents. So I figure, we can Americanize and Christianize this for all of you God-fearing folk.
I like it.
Dude, you should really be prepared for the fact that at some point, and it might not be today, it might not be next week, it might be 2 weeks from now, I'm going to do the Blair Witch Project. What the fuck is that? For the face that's hanging out behind you in that doorway. And you just
hate you guys so fucking much. We were, so I've done my first week. Now, there we go. Attaboy. Limoncello?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I have completed my first week at the new job, and I'm loving it. I've only had to help shush away 3 homeless people or tweakers so far, which is less than I thought. But anyway, Becky and I were heading out there last night, just on my night off to, just sit on the other side of the bar for a change. Mm-hmm. And as we were pulling the car out of the driveway, it was past, the sun had already gone down, and I had forgotten to turn the lamp off in the office. And I was pulling the car out, and I was looking up, and I realized something terrifying to me because of you guys, that from the street, because I haven't shut that, you can see me in my chair at a certain angle if you're walking on the street. And it still fucks me up a little bit because I realized how many nights I stayed in here until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just mixing, like, doing your own thing, like you think you're alone. And one of my greatest fears is like from the strangers, where like you're getting water in the kitchen, but then there's someone in a burlap sack or like wearing a burlap sack for a mask, like standing 5 feet behind you. Yeah. So fuck you guys very much and vigorously and hard.
Also, you can be charged with indecent exposure if that is your spank spot, my friend. So be aware.
Well, thankfully, there's not a toilet in this room.
So you're only shitter baiting still.
Yeah, it's the only way I can come.
Okay.
That's very awkward when you're having sex, but I mean, whatever you do with your life is on you.
I have a very loving wife. She understands my kinks.
So basically, she treats you like a waffle cone at the Dairy Queen. It's just soft serves you around the toilet while she's working you.
So if any of my family magically decided to listen to this, I love you very much. I'm so sorry that we fall farther and farther from God's graces.
Just giving you the old Carvel, as we used to call it. I was actually thinking about this the other day because I went back when I was labeling things for the YouTube channel after Michael so dutifully uploaded some of the lost material to the archives.
Yeah.
And I am really incendiary, particularly I think it was the episode 4, I was talking about John forcing himself on his wife, in the intro. So 30 seconds into the episode, I'm already on the verge of a trigger warning or a requirement. And I was like, I can't, I do have to kind of clarify. John does this. We've apologized multiple times. We're trying to be funny. This is the hyperbolic aspects of our personality where I assure you I'm still exactly like this if you meet me in person. But I'd like to think that I ratchet it down at least 2%.
You have come a long way because I think back in those early episodes, at a certain point, I hit we're putting this out to a lot of people, and in our normal conversations, I know that you're joking, so I don't have to trigger warning people around me. I think actually it was Michael who started on the sideline being like, "Oh, we should probably do a trigger warning." It was an arc for a little bit of Michael being like, "Trigger warning, cutting, and stuff."
Yeah. It's like a peek behind the curtain. I had discovered that 2 of my favorite characters. The Walter Sobchak in me enjoys just losing
my beer out.
My addled mind 80% of the time that I exist in the world. But then one of the podcasts I used to listen to all the time, Tell 'em Steve Dave, which has a couple of Kevin Smith acolytes, Brian Johnson on there does very much the same sort of shtick that I do, which is he'll just say anything that comes to mind because he wants to be funny, regardless of the fact that he'll offend everybody. Yeah. I think I got into my head that that's fun. That's an interesting shtick to take on the podcast. And then I do nothing but roast Michael for no good reason because we all like each other, contrary to listeners of this podcast might believe.
And actually, and it's something that's pretty fun and exciting for me the more and more I think about it. The longer that we're doing this, there's a higher number of people that haven't seen the 3 of us in the same room than not. So yeah, I guess it is kind of an important distinction to make that, we do enjoy each other's company. And I think our group chat for the podcast is about 20% business and 80% now just a really fun spot to throw esoteric memes and shit at each other that are kind of topical to what we talk about. Mm-hmm. So we have another mention, Twitter mention, and this may be topical for what's going on tonight. I just wanted to make sure I hit it before I forgot.
Okay, do it.
So at Disinformed Pod. So I really want you guys to let Michael do an episode about the Wendigo. He can pronounce it Winnebago the whole time, parenthetical, because Shane's pain is our gain. And at the end, it's revealed he was literally just talking about a MF camper van the whole G-dang time.
So welcome to the Wannabango episode. We're glad you're here.
I wish I wrote that creative of an episode.
From let's see,
who are we referring to? Is that someone we're comfortable shouting out?
That's our good old Christian friend,
the good Christian friend,
the Christian
we'll
Stitcher,
Christian. Yes.
The Christian Stitcher.
Right. So someone who sews. Well done.
Logan said, "Can't believe you guys are doing Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miracles. Really gonna enjoy it. Also love the new intro music. You killed it. Bless your heart, Logan." And I said, "Thanks, man. I hate myself for agreeing to doing this." And he says, "It's going to be a fun thing to listen to, though." He already looked up parts of it. Anyway.
Okay. Well, we're all excited about it as well, because we do enjoy torturing one another. It's kind of the joys of jocularity between men, as we all play, we take the piss and we play a bit of the dozens with one another.
I prefer to bathe in it and be healed by it.
It's the only way you come, as you say.
And I'm sorry, I mispronounced that word. It's actually Hogwarts School of Prayers and Miracules.
Yes, Miracules. Part of the fall of Troy, I believe.
Yeah.
He used to buffet people with Miracules whip. It was, it's his weapon of choice. It's grand times.
Yes. So shall we do a quick update on Shane's Halloween Corner?
Yes, we shall, because I was excited to talk about this. I truly understand Michael's love, adoration, and fascination with our good friend, Michael Flanagan.
Oh, okay.
I just completed, in the course of the past 3 days, the entirety of the Haunting of Hill House.
Ooh, okay.
Okay. So the first season, right? Hill House, and then it's Bly Manor. Okay.
Yes.
Correct. It's kind of like American Horror Show in this respect, as it's going to be anthology, so it'll have different sort of variations on the theme.
Yeah, that season fucked me up.
Which season of what?
Oh, sorry, Hill House.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I haven't watched Bly Manor yet.
I will tell you, probably being the one person in the room who read the book since we alluded to it last week, he manages to do for The Haunting of Hill House what he did for The Shining and Doctor Sleep.
Really?
In that he honors a lot of really marvelous passages from the book and a lot of the themes and the material, and yet still manages to introduce new characters and sort of float it forward into the modern iteration. Because this was something that was, I think the book is around like early 1900s, because there's a car that the character drives, but it can't be, outside of maybe 1918, possibly. Gotcha. And so to flash it forward into, the 90s and into the present day was really expertly done. And he manages to straddle the line between, honoring the material and doing something new with it that is very much his own and unique to the medium that he's serving. So I was really impressed with it, and I was simultaneously ooked out and creeped out and wound up crying like a small child
at the bent neck lady?
The end of the series. That last episode, I swear, like I was going through a box of tissues like I was a 15-year-old watching the Lifetime Network.
That whole thing is just miserably about loss and dealing with grief and loss. To the point where I think... So I loved it when we watched it originally, and then the next time I watched it was... A majority of it was like on the plane to and from my grandma's funeral, because I just for some reason thought that would be nice salt in a wound to like...
Yeah.
Sure. to watch. And watching it then, like, you truly kind of like get a grasp on like what it's drilling subtextually. And sometimes it's just drilling right into your head. It's like watching 6 Feet Under in the same concept, or, same context.
Right.
By the way, did you guys hear the news about fucking Dexter?
No.
Oh my god.
The character or
the show? Yeah.
Oh.
They are bringing back the original frontrunner and Michael C. Hall for a limited run 10-episode one-off at Showtime. Like, and if it's handled anything like they did the epilogue, it's going to be breathtakingly bad.
I still haven't watched the last season. I know how it ends. I still refuse to watch the last season. I've read the books.
Hopefully we can do this like Breaking Bad. What's his name? Vince
Gilligan.
Vince Gilligan deal.
Well played.
And be masters of our own continuity and hold on and say, don't watch the last season until you have a premiere date for the new season and see how that holds up, like with how long has it been? 6-7 years in between a horrific finale and I'm sure is going to be a horrific like, oh, here he is, everybody.
Don't give yourself enough time to get nostalgic about it before you dive headlong into the next travesty.
It'd be like if Game of Thrones was like, psych.
You know what's funny?
Season 9.
On that topic, not to deviate off of what you're talking about, but having just finished A Dance with Dragons for the first time, I was pleasantly surprised at the volume of, one, like, additional characters and subplots that exist within the book arc.
Oh, yeah.
That was not represented in the series. So there is a very legitimate chance that the ending of the books is going to be dramatically different from what it was on the show.
That was an argument that was floating. Sorry, Michael, I'm not trying to barrel over you.
Most people do.
Right. That was an argument that I saw floating around the interwebs when the series concluded was, well, now we just need to wait for Martin to finish his thing so he can do it fucking right so that we have like a satisfying conclusion. Which, by the way, I'm going to be one of those criers that will say that I enjoyed the show for what it was. Even the ending, I didn't really care. I didn't have an idealistic approach. Like, it was kind of fitting to kind of like buck what you were expecting a little bit.
It's a roller coaster ride, you know? You want to just get on, ride it, experience it, and then get back off. I'm not going to sit the entire time going, you know, you could have made that turn just a little bit more hair-raising just to get my blood back up. But Michael, please, thoughts?
I was just going to talk about Lady Stoneheart.
Yes.
Which is probably one of the most lacking characters that was in the book that isn't in the show. And I feel like would have changed a lot of things. Also, what was it? Stone Belwas? Or Strong Belwas?
Strong Belwas, yes.
One of my fact
that he shows up with Barristan is intriguing. But then the whole subplot with Aegon Targaryen, which is not the Aegon Targaryen of the show, and then to encounter all the Dornish sort of like subversion that's going on. Moorish. There is a lot of stuff going on in those books that just is totally unaccounted for on the show. Just characters that were either blended together. They did what the Lord of the Rings did with the source material, which is they started giving lines to other people. They threw characters and just blended them together where they went, why introduce someone new when there's already so many other characters in here?
You guys are really giving me a hard decision to make, and I feel like you all are just gonna have to solve it for me, or like tell me what to do, because
you know what he's saying, Michael.
Do it, you won't. No balls.
Okay.
You don't have the balls to pull the trigger.
I was going to say, like, he could be saying, you know, tonight's the night I'm finally going to, you know, drown myself in my toilet when I finish.
I'll circle back. I'll circle back to that.
You don't have the nut.
I need to right now I'm finishing listening to Children of the Mind, and I'm still finishing reading 1122. But what's next on my list is Dune, because of the movie, like the baller version of the movie is coming out in December. So I've never read Dune. It's not coming out in December? I thought it was December.
They floated it forward to October of next year.
I've got
effectively
time.
Crushing my spirit all in one fell swoop.
I was
so ready for that movie. I cannot tell you how stoked I am to see that thing done. Anyway,
I didn't know that it got floated.
Yeah, I got really upset.
It makes sense, but I mean, fuck. So I need to read Dune, and that's not to say that I'll stop at just Dune itself, because I know that's an expanded universe. There's what, like 4 or 5 books?
No.
It's like 80.
So, man, if you really want me to go off on a tangent, we can get into this, because Dune is one of my favorite things.
Okay, snapshot.
So there are 6 books officially, I believe, in the original arc.
Okay.
That were written by Frank Herbert. He ends the 6th one on a cliffhanger. And then he died. So what everyone is like terrified about with George Martin.
Yep.
But he left a significant amount of material in a lockbox that his son found while they were working on the estate. And then they have parceled out all the materials in his notebooks into probably an additional 4 or 5 series that are at least 3 books each. So there's an additional like almost 20 books of material that involved like either in between chapters, between books in the series, prequel series, and all these other things. So it's an investment in months if you really want to get into it. And I will tell you, as someone who, my dad gave me the book and showed me the original David Lynch film when I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
I was not mentally prepared for what a task this was going to be, because there's a glossary of terms you have to understand, because Herbert is not one of those where he really kind of just helps to gently baptize you into the world with context. He just throws terms out at you. And he's like, you're gonna either look at the glossary or you're gonna take it from the context and just roll with it.
Right.
So
Sci-fi,
it is,
you know?
it's a baptism by fire when you first start, but once you get into it, man, it's fantastic. I love it.
Well, Dune/Dune series, or starting the Dune series, is option one. Another option is reading The Lord of the Rings for the first time, because I've never read The Lord of the Rings either.
Ooh.
And then the third option would be what you're doing now, Shane, which is going through Game of Thrones. So I guess I am looking for series in a way. I just didn't. Oh, and also, lest we forget, I still have The Tower to finish, but I'm having senioritis with that one.
Oh, you need to if I'm going to recommend anything, because you already
finished The Tower. You're
familiar with the series and you know the characters. Undertaking any of these other things, like, I don't mean to keep just buffaloing Michael right now, because I see your eyes lighting up of wanting to interject.
I was glaring at him because of the not finishing The Tower. That was
understandable.
That was it, yeah.
But I was just talking about this again with Melissa earlier, where I was saying it's weird because I just finished. You know, the Game of Thrones books are massive. They're monumental. So they're, the last two are over like 1,000 pages each. And so I went from that to, I picked up Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which is a collection of Stephen King stories again, and that's 800 pages. And then I was contemplating reading Frankenstein, because I have not read the original source material. And when I looked at it, it was like 200 pages, and I went,
You're like, oh, that's a sitting.
I was like, oh, I forgot. The normal pages for, like, a page count for a book is like 200, 300 pages. And I keep reading these authors who it's like, okay, Tolkien and Herbert and King, who it's like, 800 pages later, you're just getting your toe dipped into the water. We're like, okay, I need to get back to the land of, like, reasonably sized material for a while.
Speaking of, and then I'll be done in my little corner. I don't even think we answered the original question of what you're doing Halloween wise, by the way.
That was the Haunting of Hill House as well.
Oh, okay, good. I succeeded in something that I've been trying to do for probably a year now, and as of this recording, Becky has bought the audiobook for The Stand and is making her way through it. And her first impressions already is, I'm in love with it. And there's I think it's like a 48-hour audiobook. She's like, I think I'll finish it this month. And I'm super excited. All it took was showing her one awesome trailer for the CBS All Access miniseries coming out in December. And that one isn't pushed. That's happening. But yeah, so I'm excited. I texted her. I was like, MOON. That spells good book.
Which I assure you, she probably still has no context for whatsoever.
I think when I read it originally, I explained who Mr. Cullen was.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but
Michael, you look like you've had things that you've been wanting to release, other than your girlfriend, for hours now.
Oh, he'll never release her.
I can't find release. I did at some point. So I guess going a little bit back, yes, you should definitely finish book 7 of The Tower before you forget a lot of the important, information about people.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that earlier today when I was trying to rush through The Shining.
Is that you want me to be able to catch all your references?
Well, kind of. You want to catch all of Stephen King's references, but there were so many things even in The Shining that I'm like, I don't remember this, and I read it not even a year ago.
Yeah,
and then I sat down and thought, I'm like, I don't remember a lot of the stuff that happened in The Tower. So I'm glad I sat down and read them all as soon as I could.
Well, it's just because you don't have a college level comprehension of the material.
Ouch. Okay, just because I read on a second grade level
Drink.
Doesn't mean I can't read the big words. I just need a dictionary for those.
Okay,
it takes a little bit longer to understand the big words, but I still try. Okay.
Shane said he was going to be nicer to you, so now I need to pick up the slack a little bit and be the one that's being an asshole all the time.
That's fair.
To Michael's point, there is a lot of important sort of subtext and little nuance things that happen with characters and other situations. And also, by the time you get to meta levels on King, which is going to happen in this book, your context is really helpful. And particularly, you're not going to forget most of the things that are going on. I'm sure you could barrel into this a year from now and you would still be okay. I think it's more of eating, while the cheese is still ripe and in its best flavorful state, as opposed to letting it languish in your refrigerator for a year.
Yeah, I'm not a cold pizza kind of guy.
Yeah.
I could do room temp, but I'm not a cold pizza guy.
Drop
Good
it like
analogy.
it's hot.
Well, I think I'm halfway through Resident Evil 3 right now, like gameplay wise. Becky and I watched a Shudder original last night called Scare Me, which has Aya Cash in it, and it was worth a once over. It's pretty bare bones setup, like two strangers in a cabin, super meta. It's more like a comedy with some elements of horror in it. I wouldn't say I highly recommend it. I think it could have been done a lot better, but it was fun for the season. Halfway through Resident Evil 3. That's what I was thinking about before I came up here. I really want to rewatch the actual like OG or 2002 Resident Evil movie. Just for the fuck of it. Because I remember really, really enjoying that. And it's so campy and like action horror. Action horror, I think, gets overlooked in my head because it tends not to be good, but it's just popcorn.
Mm. It's I really enjoy that movie. Of the series, I think it gives you like a false read, like a false positive, because it's really well done and it doesn't hit as much of like as campy as the later films would get, and how bizarre and out of the box the rest of the storytelling becomes. I really like just the quick, digestible first film, and plus
they also count their ammo in that movie, I think.
Yes, and I mean Michelle Rodriguez actually gives a performance where
and that was in
the
Fast and Furious
RBF,
days. Yeah,
I mean, makes sense, and the character is in keeping. I think like that and SWAT are the two films that I can look at with her in it. Whereas it makes sense that your character just sits and glares at everybody the entire film.
Yeah, Michael, did you finish Blind Manor like you thought you would? Did you watch it all on the plane, or
No. I tried reading The Shining. I haven't even started it yet. But one thing I did get from Kentucky from a friend
herpes
was no, I already had that. No, it's the Call of Cthulhu
a protection
game.
order.
No, I already had that too. Why are you guys talking about stuff that's already happened to me? The Call of Cthulhu game.
Ooh, the PlayStation one?
Yes, the PlayStation one, yes.
It looks fun, so I want you to tell me, like, I need an honest review of that.
When I can find time to play it, I will.
Yeah, the trailer looked interesting. I was very intrigued by the concept.
Yeah, because I'm going to have to try and squeeze that game in before the 20th, so I won't be able to finish in 6 days because...
Yes, you can.
There is another game that's coming out, I believe, on the 20th that I'm really, really excited to play called Amnesia Rebirth.
Do I need to play the other ones to get it, you think?
I don't think so, but, I mean, you should play the Amnesia games the first one. Bay of Pigs is kind of, I think it's called Bay of Pigs. Machine for Pigs. That one is...
Bay of Pigs.
I confuse, ancient. I confuse old CIA blunders with video games all the time. I'm sorry.
Don't we all?
Yes. The first one, A Dark Descent, really good. You should play it.
Okay.
And then if you are into more of the sci-fi horror, Soma is also made by them, also really good.
Tight.
It's also if you have what is it called, thalassophobia, I think, a fear of deep water.
I
also
don't,
very terrifying.
but I do at the same time. I don't until I'm in it.
I mean, he shitterbaits all the time. He's obviously not afraid of plumbing the depths.
Listen,
He's
I know that
not
some of you
afraid.
wash your balls in the shower, but I prefer to wash them in the toilet.
Yeah.
Don't you have a bidet?
He did get that specifically to give the full undercarriage clean.
Yeah, I don't drink any water the night before, and I just let the dehydrated balls hang into the toilet, and I spray them with the bidet.
Oh, okay. Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then I have aggressive diarrhea, and I revert the whole process.
That's why John's been waxing his sack meat for the last 15 years. He's got to get all the nooks and crannies clean. It's like a fucking English muffin down there.
How much money do you think I make behind a bar? Not
I
that
didn't say
much.
you had to spend much in order to wax it. You're just taking like packing tape and wrapping up your testicles and ripping it off.
Well, speaking of hairy situations,
grand Sigourney right there.
Good.
Michael has something he wants to talk to us about today. But now that we're 30 minutes into the show proper, I think Shane has something to tell you, the listener.
I make a point of trying not to interject when we're actually having organic flow through here, as Otho would say. So it's important to say. But for those of you who are uninitiated and didn't realize that you were walking in on a newly, dubbed game podcast and gaming podcast, what we typically do here is we will delve into a random esoteric topic, and in the course of explaining it to one another, we will leaven in the occasional lie, just to keep things interesting and throw us all off the scent of anything rational that might be occurring. In most instances, the material we're covering is so bizarre in and of itself that you can manage to slide a few things by the co-host as Michael is taking, cocaine hits over here on this.
It's nasal spray. I'm draining for some reason, so I'm trying to clear my sinuses.
For some reason, the jet lag has finally caught up. So you're over here, Wolf of Wall Streeting
He's
here.
Fucking Carrie era king over here, just shoving anything and everything up his fucking nose while we're trying to do a show.
Well, I don't remember writing this episode, so this is going to be interesting.
So. In any event, you can play along at the home game whenever we identify a lie. We like to call it out in situ and holler posse at it. And unfortunately, though, try as we might, there are no points for a correct answer, and no one wins at this game, much like life or the 2020 election.
Right.
So, gentlemen, we have something very interesting that we're going to morph into this evening. Pun intended. Michael, what are we talking about?
So we're talking about the Winnebago.
It's morphin' time.
Just to start out, I have 4 lies. One is a very obvious lie. I would be very offended if you did not get it.
Prepare to be offended.
You graduated college?
That hurt. 10 years and I'm still not done.
That's what she said.
Yes.
It's not the university's fault that it's taken you 8 years to learn English.
No child left behind.
We're all making this podcast. We're obviously intellectually crippled. I think we've understood that for a long, long time.
Okay. You forgot to say narcissistic and crippled.
Narcissically.
Narcissicophant.
Narcissic. Ooh, I actually like that. That's
all
a
right,
cool
so anyway,
portmanteau.
You were saying, Michael, something about a Winnebago and...
I had a portmanteau the other day with some liver. It was very tasty. I think it was an 87 portmanteau.
Pinot Gris.
Yeah. Good year.
Pinot Gris.
I don't think you're supposed to say that anymore.
This is why we don't have random, episodes, loose fit, as John would call them anymore. Because it's like watching popcorn kernels pop.
Yeah,
we just
terrible.
start losing our minds.
We learned our lesson.
Yeah,
that's why when he said that he wanted to do just a free form of The Shining, I was like, I'll do something.
I need to do some cocaine.
Okay, but you did wrap this Winnebago package up as pretty easily digestible, quick and out, right?
Yeah, it's only 20 pages.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's he used the Winnebago to make some meth in. That's what he's snorting presently.
Snort.
I'm just gonna cut out that
gross.
Snort. I'm cutting out.
Why aren't you more fucking ashamed of yourself?
I'm always ashamed of myself. It's a baseline, so I can't really. If I'm always ashamed of myself, I can't really get much lower than that. So
listen, I will drink your nasal drainage if you could just get to the goddamn point.
Okay, so I want to start off by reading a quote from this website that I found on the Wendigo. I almost called it the Winnebago just out of principle. It's some guy who was named Jefferson Muncie, and that's actually the website. It's like jeffersonmuncie.com.
Oh, good.
Yes. So it starts off, and I like the intro to it. So I'm not reading the whole thing, but just a couple of small paragraphs.
Do it to me, Daddy.
Cannibalism has always been taboo. The act of eating another person feels like a betrayal of human nature.
Lies.
Not eating out, eating. Okay, I figured
way.
you were going to call bull.
Why not both?
No. The Cannibal of Rotterdam has taught us anything. It's eating people is an honor.
True. Those who engage in the act are viewed as monstrous, someone who has lost their humanity. The legend of the Wendigo goes back hundreds of years and is said to originate with the Vikings who landed in Greenland. Traditional stories about the Wendigo take place during the winter. And
I'm going to call bullshit on the Vikings. It's I believe that's it's American Indian folklore.
Our modern day, yeah, no, you're right.
Okay,
You're right.
All right.
Is that the one
Our
that you were
modern
going to
day-
be offended if you didn't get?
No.
Okay,
no,
good.
No.
Hooray.
Our modern day interpretation of the Wendigo primarily comes from the Algonquin people who lived in the woods of Nova Scotia and the Great Lakes region of Canada.
I'm very
Bless
proud
you.
of you for pronouncing that, Michael.
Thank you. All Native American cultures have some variation on the myth of the Wendigo. The major similarities between all cultures being that the creature is cannibalistic. So, traditional stories about the Wendigo take place during the winter, an especially difficult time of the year in the far north due to a lack of plentiful hunting and farming. Many went hungry, and dying of starvation was common.
And you couldn't send people to the wall.
True that, you were past the wall. Actually, there was no wall.
Indeed.
You were just another brick in the wall, if there was one.
Ooh. When someone's on the brink of death, all other concerns fall away. Starvation causes depression, anxiety, and aggression. This weakness from starvation is what the Wendigo preys on. It possesses a human host, causing immense hunger and uncontrollable urges to eat human flesh. As the person feeds, they begin to transform into the creature. Now, because I was lazy and quite unprepared this week, I actually wrote it in like about an hour's worth yesterday. I'm quite proud of it. I decided to let others do the majority of the work for me. Basil Johnston is quoted on Wikipedia. Is quoted on the Wikipedia page for the Wendigo, giving a description of the Wendigo. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion... Damn it, I got so many of the other fancy words.
I knew you were presenting today, so I actually have a 32-ounce growler in front of me, so if I need more beer, I can get it.
Capital oof. I actually only grabbed a beer today because I spent a lot of my weekend drinking because I went to a wedding.
You're hurting, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't need to spend that much money on beer for like another week or two just to recoup my losses here. So
perhaps he's wondering why you would eat a man before throwing him out in the rain.
That was so good. I thought about that scene earlier. Like, I think I quoted either it was on the podcast or in my personal life. I don't know anymore. Anyway,
also the fact that it's Littlefinger who is trying to kill him in that is even more entertaining.
It fucked my brain the first time I realized it.
Anyway, Michael, please continue.
Its complexion, the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Unclean and suffering from the separation of the flesh, the Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. Pretty good quote.
Indeed. And this is from some sort of literary work that he's thrown together, or does he claim he encountered one?
No. He's a literary scholar for...
BuzzFeed.
No, for cultures. He's a historian. I can't remember.
Okay,
but he's a Native American historian from the area.
Okay,
he's one of
like
the other cultures that
basically.
yes he's one of the other cultures I don't want to try and pronounce, but it's like Ojibwe or something like that.
I like that he said he wasn't going to pronounce it,
and then I butchered it anyway because I have to try it. Yes.
All right.
So additionally, whenever a Wendigo ate another person, it would grow in proportion to the meal it had just eaten, so it could never truly be full. Thus, Wendigos are portrayed as simultaneously gluttonous and extremely thin due to starvation. So, on the surface, this myth looks kind of like, it looks like a very simple cautionary tale, right? Don't eat other people because it kind of kills the whole cooperation vibe, right? Why would you work with Joe when you know full well he's going to start munching on your back the moment it's turned, right? Easy enough explanation.
I just met a lot of new people this week, and I agree. I hope that randomly, while working with one of my new coworkers, that they didn't try to chew on my back fat.
Yeah, John also has a lot of trepidation about things happening behind him, as we've learned from this podcast.
Hello?
It's funny because I can see the reflection of the closet in the door, and it actually looks like a silhouetted figure.
Yeah, so you can fuck yourself straight to Winnebago hell.
Oh, man.
Baby's on the patio.
Baby's
on the rooftop.
silhouette in the doorway.
Wendigo's gonna eat me.
Wendigos and Winnebagos.
And
there's
there's our
a bunch
clip.
of like gaunt like creatures just try like one giant thing trying to drive like a Winnebago with its like giant claws. It's like
It would be like the American Werewolf in London version of a werewolf behind the seat of a car. Or
Wendigos wanna bang hoes in Winnebangos.
that's the name of the new band touring with Gushing Grannies.
What's it
It's
do?
Brockman.
so unfortunately the simple explanation is not all to it. We got to talk about the reason some cultures believe in the Wendigo.
Winnebago.
We got to talk about the reason some cultures believe the Wendigo possesses someone. Because there's other cultures that believe that there's not necessarily a spirit, but it's just the act of cannibalization starts turning you into the Wendigo. So it's not like a separate entity or like a supernatural sort of entity that possesses you. It's just the act of doing it to turn you into one.
How long can something be out and you still have to say spoiler alert?
Are you talking about
A video game.
Until Dawn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to write a little section that had like references to like pop culture, but the other section that I'm going to be introducing in a couple of moments here,
Or
I
there's
thought
a
it was more interesting.
shitty episode of Supernatural, like season 1, episode 4, that you can
Probably.
watch. Anyway,
Or Pet
sorry.
Cemetery for those who are also,
fuck,
gunslingers.
That was the main reason why I was interested in the Wendigo.
All right. So anyway,
yes.
the origins of the Winnebago.
Yes. So we got to talk about the reason some cultures believe the Wendigo possesses someone as opposed to the other thing, right? And it is the totally not controversial modern medical term known as Wendigo psychosis. Now, Wendigo psychosis, the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, which is essentially just it's a tool the WHO uses for like disorders and stuff, diagnosing people.
The who?
The WHO.
I understood. It took me a brief second, and I was like, no.
The
not
World Health
Pinball
Organization.
I was like, Tommy?
So it classifies Wendigo, spelt with 2 I's instead of an E and an I, which is odd, as a culture-specific disorder, describing it as rare historic accounts of cannibalistic obsession. Symptoms included depression, homicidal or suicidal thoughts, and a delusional compulsive wish to eat human flesh.
All right.
I see what you're going at, John.
Is the spelling real?
No, yes, it is real. Sorry.
But he
I
shook
thought
his
you were
head
asking if it was bullshit, and so I got my wires crossed, and that's why I was shaking my head no.
All right.
It is. That's why I mentioned it, because it was spelled that way, which in all the other versions of the Wendigo.
In folklore, it's spelled differently, but the medical or the psychiatric spelling is a little wonky.
Yes. I thought that was weird, and I just wanted to make it known. But yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to quote a 1661, so the year of our Lord, 1661, report from the Jesuit Relations.
Jesuit.
Fuck. Yeah, I knew I was going to butcher that one.
I've had some G-Suet. As long as you season it well, it's very tasty.
Christian Stitcher's having a fucking field trip.
Yeah. So it's a chronicle of those missions, because I don't want to say that name again.
Jesuit.
Jesuit, yeah.
Bless you. It's a chronicle of those missions in New France, which is the North American French colony, that part of Louisiana all the way up to Quebec, sorry.
Quebec is like a bad 80s arcade game.
We are
does sound
fucking
like
you
that.
so hard. We're turning your 20 minutes into 80. I
It's
will
like
try
a
and
Frenchman just jumping along, stinky cheese, going, fuck.
I will try and take 1 foot off of your dick so you can get through this.
No, you're good. What caused us greater concern was the news that met us upon entering the lake, namely that the men had met their death the previous winter in a strange manner. Those poor men were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. And by that he means the native Algonquin peoples. They are afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease, which affects their imaginations and causes them a more than canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men, like veritable werewolves, and devour them voraciously, without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey, and the more greedily, the more they eat. This ailment attacked our deputies, and as death is the sole remedy among those simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness.
You were doing so brilliantly,
He was.
and then you ran into glute.
I got tripped up there.
But
Yeah.
other than that...
Did I say glut?
No, you said glute.
Oh.
I wish the listeners
The word
could
is
see-
glut, but yes.
Oh.
I wish the listeners could have seen your face when Shane was saying that, and you're like, you went like just as pencil thin as your mouth could go, and it's like, yeah, I stumbled. Yeah.
But you did really well other than that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to condemn with faint praise. You are getting much more adept at cold reads, which is a learned practice, I can assure you, from having done this before. So I applaud your efforts.
My speech therapist says I can graduate in a couple weeks if I keep it up.
He
Do you
thrusts
really
his
have a speech
fists.
Speaking of
I'd have a handwriting therapist, or
what?
Someone's giving you like a handwriting analysis.
I had such terrible handwriting when I was, I think, in 3rd or 4th grade that they started sending me to see somebody during school time to improve my handwriting.
Ah, okay.
Well,
And now at the place that I work, it's basically like a nightmare come real because we don't have any digital boards for the beer list.
Ooh.
So if
Oh,
if things kick, you have to like use it write on a chalkboard or like these like chalk tiles to put up. And self-consciously, if I write anything now that I know that people are going to see, I only write in block caps. That's all I do because I learned from an instructor years and years ago. Like we're like, hey, nice handwriting. He goes, oh yeah, someone once told me if you write in all caps, everyone's gonna be able to read it. And I took that to heart. So now accidentally I've become you update the boards guy because they like the all caps, but it's the worst thing for me to do because I have a conniption every time I have to do it.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well,
sorry,
lucky
I
for
got
you.
triggered a little bit.
I have a doctorate in palmistry from the University of Budapest. So, you and I can meet and chat about our handy stuff.
Ah, so
Not-
Shane,
not
I see you're a
Budapest.
smart ass here, but I will have you know that I am well trained in the arts of Santeria.
Ah, and
I
what
ain't got
you
no Santeria.
unrelated folks might call black magic.
I definitely don't got no crystal ball.
One day you're gonna be trying on this hat. Anyway, sorry. Fuck me to death forever. I hope the ghost behind me fucking just really guts me.
That
Michael,
ghost
continue.
is just shaking its head in disappointment.
What is it, my dad?
Yes. Speaking of murdering those afflicted, there's a special case involving a shaman.
Don't make me spit.
Or ShamWow, either way you want to slice it.
Involving a shaman
It's a shaman
Named-
in the Winnebago.
named Jack Fiddler.
It's so beautiful the time of year when the shaman swim up river.
The Winnebago catches the shaman as it swims upstream, and then it mates and dies.
Ravenously devours them.
It's like he's unlearning how to speak the English language.
This isn't my first language.
I can
I
tell.
have no first language. I don't speak.
I'm sorry that I didn't ask you what language you identify as.
Unlike Michael, prepare for the bleep. John's first language was Gaelic.
I'll get it together, I promise.
Oh my goodness. I'm almost done, I swear. Okay.
John hails from French Lick, Indiana.
Whew. I don't know why that got me so good. Oh, why'd you have to be so good, Michael?
Do I need to mute him in order for you to proceed, Michael?
No, because then it would be a bitch to edit out.
That's
good.
fine point.
I'm good. I'm back. I'm here. I don't know what happened.
Okay. the shaman swim upstream. So there's a famous case involving a shaman named Jack Fiddler who is known for his powers at defeating Wendigos. A sort of exorcist, if you will, especially when the exorcism in question entailed killing people who were diagnosed with Wendigo psychosis.
Is that bullshit?
No. I actually included this guy's Wikipedia page in the show notes because the story is much more sad than I can explain here. And if you're interested in learning more about Canadian exploitation of Native peoples, then give it a read. Honestly, it was a little piece in the Wendigo Wikipedia page, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's read more about him. Oh, that was a lot worse than I needed to see. So, essentially, he was arrested with his brother Joseph. I'm sorry? What was that?
Is there something on the rooftop.
Joseph on the Winnebago! Joseph killing Wendigos? I don't know. Essentially, he was arrested with his brother Joseph by the Canadian authorities for murdering Joseph's daughter-in-law the year before. And that's kind of where the Canadian exploitation kind of came in, because the Canadian Mounties essentially wanted to start exercising more control over the more native peoples in the north. Again, not doing that topic justice, and I didn't want to.
Right. It's in the show notes. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, if you're interested, please read it. I think it's literally the first. No, it's the last link. So it literally says Jack_Fiddler. Read it. It's interesting. Anyway, Jack escaped captivity and hung himself nearby, while his brother Joseph was convicted and executed 3 days. I wrote after his death, after he was exonerated. So he was. This is when I was
3 days after his death.
I'm going to kill you to death.
I was trying to finish this before I had to go grocery shopping. And so what I meant to say was he was executed 3 days before he was, I believe, exonerated.
Okay.
In 1909. And so the last thing I want to mention is one of the more famous cases of Wendigo psychosis reported involved a Plains Cree trapper named Swift Runner. During the winter of 1978, Swift Runner and his family were starving, and his eldest son died. 25 miles away from the emergency food supplies at a Hudson's Bay Company post, Swift Runner, wow, I don't know why I was butchering that. Swift Runner butchered and ate his wife and 5 remaining children. Given that he resorted to cannibalism so near to food supplies, and that he killed and consumed the remains of all those present, it was revealed that Swift Runner's was not a case of pure cannibalism as a last resort to avoid starvation, but rather of a man with Wendigo psychosis. He eventually confessed and was executed by the authorities at Fort Saskatchewan.
I mean,
and I'm
really,
so proud that I said that word right.
They should have just understood. Anybody who's taken a family trip, as you get 12 miles into the thing, you're like, I will eat every one of you motherfuckers right now if you do not shut up, sit down, and stop touching your sister.
One more thing. Yeah. Michael.
And I just had an idea. If I had more time, I wanted to actually end with another lie. I'm just saying this just because I got this idea of a person that was locked in that was a caretaker for a old hotel in near Denver, Colorado. But I just had that idea now, and I wish I could have done it. But
I appreciate your ruse, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So we missed everything except for Vikings. We missed the one.
3.
So you're offended then because there's one in there that you were offended. Yeah. Okay. What was that one?
So I'll say that one first. I said it's the totally not controversial modern medical term known as Wendigo psychosis, and I even made sure to specify that they considered a culture-specific disorder. It's totally controversial. Fascination with Wendigo psychosis among Western ethnographers, psychologists, and anthropologists led to a hotly debated controversy in the 80s over the historicity of this phenomenon. Some researchers argued that essentially Wendigo psychosis was a fabrication, the result of naive anthropologists taking stories related to them at face value without observation.
Okay. Now, there's an argument to be made that, we thought you were being sarcastic when you say that it is totally not controversial, which was the tone that I thought you were going for. But
That's
to
fair.
your
It
point,
just flew over my head.
I will go with you, and you can chastise me for not calling that.
I won't chastise.
Wow. Trust me, I understand. You've got the
I used
jet
up all my
lag,
vocab words for the
yeah.
day.
So trust me, I sympathize with your plight presently.
Yes. So the last two lies. So I was quite crafty with this. I got you with a lieception. So the explanation. Yeah. The Vikings who landed in Greenland, yes, that was a lie. Our modern day interpretation comes from Algonquin peoples. The lie for that was all Native American cultures have some variation on the myth of the Wendigo. The major similarities being that all culture between them being that it's cannibalistic. That is not true. The Wendigo myth is concentrated around the Great Lakes and the massive forests that stretch from there to the north. So, especially if you were to think that it deals primarily with starvation, and I mentioned during the winter. So, if you go to places that are more, like Florida or anywhere south of the Great Lakes, starvation isn't as likely to happen.
Okay.
Right? So, that was another lie.
I think also the thing that I was running with in my head as you were explaining that is in the southwestern Native American cultures, the ideas of skin changers or skin walkers does somewhat have a relation to that. So I went, okay, this could be plausible.
Right.
And then I kind of disregarded the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But, that is a good point. There's actually another kind of closely related myth. It's not the Wendigo per se, but it's from peoples that were settled in the Seattle, the Washington / Vancouver area, I believe. But that the Wendigo wasn't necessarily insane. It was a cannibalistic creature, but it was more enlightened by ancestral spirits as opposed to it being insane.
Okay, so it's doing it out of a desire to somewhat take on the attributes of the individual it's consuming, like other cannibalistic cultures.
Mm-hmm. It was like a parallel myth to the Wendigo.
Okay.
Yes. And then the last one was kind of a cheesy one. I focused primarily on the lieception there, but the last one was during the winter of 1978, where this guy ate his 5 kids
his family.
and his... Yeah, and the fact that he was executed and all that stuff. It happened in 1878.
Okay.
Yes.
An old Watkins shuffle there.
Yeah. I even looked up because Hudson Bay Company is like a big like colonizing company, like the East India Trading Company or, stuff like that. I looked it up to see if it still existed and actually still does.
Ooh.
They make like clothes or something like that, I think, but they're like they're now a private company. They used to be traded on the stock market and all this other stuff until like last year they started massively selling their stuff. So I thought that was interesting, but
quite.
Yeah, that's my spoopy take on the Wendigo and Wendigo psychosis.
It's a Winnebago.
I'm glad you got into the spirit of the season and didn't just relegate it to the two of us being the ones just throwing our heads into the muck. So thank you for diving in with us.
Well, once Jonathan,
Am I in trouble?
I have no idea why I called you Jonathan. Well, once Jonathan said that he was going to simply do a freeform for Stephen King, I almost said Stephen Hawking for some reason, I felt that it was my civic duty to do an episode so we don't ramble on for an hour and a half.
He says as he rambles.
I mean, what's the problem with rambling on for an hour and a half? Some of us enjoy that nonsense.
I've grown tired of rambling
I was
alone.
born a rambling man.
I heard Michael's joke instead of yours, John. So
that's probably the best. Well, I went with Isbell, and he went with nonsense. So
no, it was a music reference. I don't remember the song, but now Shane
Mama,
wishes that
I was born a rambling man. I knew what you were talking about. Yeah, I was with you.
I just can't remember the song or like what it's called and who wrote it, played it.
It's called Rambling Man.
Oh,
I've been tired of rambling alone, is what I said. I did a play on in Isbell.
I see. Okay. Well. Swing and a miss on both sides, and I appreciate the attempt.
Yeah, I just got no more jam left to give in the old peener.
If it were a snake, it would have bit me.
Hot?
With that attitude.
Poison snakes. Well, I think that we've sufficiently given ourselves an out, and we've made it through an hour of glorious audio recording, and kept it semi-succinct, other than the fact that we were trampling over the bulk of Michael's presentation as per usual.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just on brand.
Yeah, it pretty much is.
It's important for us to do that.
I actually do write when I actually spend time to write my script, I write each bullet point to be at least, or at most 3 sentences, because I figured after that point I would be interrupted.
You are correct.
I mean, if it happens enough times, you bang your head into a wall enough times, you realize that it hurts. So,
Do you?
That's the phrase, right? That's an idiom, right? That's a pop culture. I don't know. End me, Shane, please.
Okay, well, for those that wanted to get into a little Stephen King conversation, John, did you have a jumping off point that you wanted to slide into here to make this kingly?
Oh, I could probably think of something on the fly here.
Why did I expect any preparation from you for something that you've posited that we needed to do? I should have just expected that nothing would have been preconceived, and it would have just said.
Oh, I was going to do a running gig where I was like, John, why are you pulling out a giant book? Why is that all written notes? How much preparation did you do, John?
How many times do I have to tell you guys that literally the only time I'll do prep is for the elevator game? No, I don't know why I've been thinking about it a lot. The difference between the Kubrick and the miniseries on The Shining, and why for some reason I have this weird hang up where I really, really loved the inclusion of the Hornet's Nest in the miniseries for The Shining, and for it being absent in the Kubrick version bothers me so now that we're in
the
Stephen King, in Stephen King talk, if no one has read The Shining, this is not going to make any fucking sense to you, and I apologize, and please keep listening. Keep our retention numbers solid and strong.
Yes.
There's a really strong metaphor that the Hornet's Nest, I think, poses in the book itself, especially as the book carries on and on and on and on and on. And it being gone in the Kubrick version kind of lessens some of the sinister tones for me. I don't know. I'm lost in my own asshole at this point, so I'm just begging for Shane to help me out, to flush out what I'm trying to say here.
All right, I didn't want to just eat your meal for you by assuming what it was that you wanted to talk about. So if we're going to drill down on specifically, this was a topic we were going to bring up for Phoenix Fan Fusion this year before everything vomited and we wound up not having any gatherings at all. But we were going to do kind of a side-by-side comparison talking about, one, the Dr. Sleep film, and how it honors both the Shining book and the Shining film, in addition to then including the source material from Dr. Sleep. But there has been a lot of contention and a lot of dissent between, one, fans of film, because we've all known that Kubrick is an auteur filmmaker, and it's really easy to sort of loralize that film because it's brilliant. It is one of the, greatest, I should say, most lauded horror films of all time. It's in many people's top 5 as far as if you want to herald something that really is unnerving and creepy and ghastly all at the same time, but also has an interesting character arc. It's a really marvelous film, and Kubrick does a phenomenal job. There's a bloody documentary out, which is...
what is that?
Really,
Inside
it's
Room
good. Yeah.
237? Is that what it is?
Yes, it's room 237.
237. Oh.
It might be it's 237, I think, because we're going with what's in it's the book and the film have 2 different numbers, which is fun.
I just realized that. I just remember that.
But yeah, the entire documentary delves greedily and deeply into all of the nuances and little tricks and sort of bits that are included in the background that occur over the course of the film to show just how cerebral Kubrick is as a filmmaker. So, taking nothing away from that, Stephen King has also had a long-running argument against the fact that the tone of the film is dramatically different from what he wanted the tone of the book to be. In that, yes, the hotel itself is kind of the antagonist, and it sort of leeches onto Jack as a character and manages to kind of subvert him, but there is ultimately a redemption to that character at the end of the story, whereas Kubrick makes him more menacing and kind of sinister, and he doesn't change at all and is just completely overthrown by the entity by the end of it. So to your point, John, what I think you're referring to is that being there is somewhat a catalyst that both brings the entire family into the idea that the hotel is kind of pervading their spirit and invading their thoughts, and it localizes on he's gassed the thing, he knew that it was not full of hornets any longer, and yet it manifests them almost out of thin air. And so that's one of the catalysts for seeing the supernatural sort of start invading their lives. And so it's a necessary thing for the storytelling aspects, but the way Kubrick throws everything together is from the moment you walk into that hotel, everything starts kind of slip sliding away.
Yeah.
And that's also a good point too, because like the main thing that I like to always discuss when talking about the difference between the book and the movie is the difference between Jack as a character in both of them.
Dog.
Mm-hmm.
Because and the wasp scene is a very good thing to include when you talk about Jack as the father in the book, where he is a very kind and loving father who has issues.
Mm-hmm.
He's haunted by demons, but that isn't necessarily all his character is.
That's
because
the heart. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because there's a lot of points in the book where he does have those moments of clarity when he's like, I need to do this, or I care about Danny. I could never hurt him. I could never do this. I could never do that. I will throw away everything and throw away this job and leave, or I can let everything blow up right now. And we can all just leave and say that something happened. Like, he has those moments in the book that don't carry over into the film. And the wasp scene is very good about that, because he wasn't like, I can't imagine movie Jack doing something like that, because he's more concentrated on the book. I can't imagine him necessarily, because I don't even think they cover too much of the caretaker duties that he does in the book in the actual movie.
No. It's why in Flanagan's Dr. Sleep, how it kind of culminates in the boiler room. Why when I saw that for the first time, I wanted to squeeze whoever was next to me's leg, whether it was you or Shane. I don't know if I was in the middle. I think it was Shane.
It was me.
The moment that I saw the boiler, I was like, oh my God, there's going to be a redemption here. And I feel like what you're talking about, one, I just had this like weird epiphany of like, God damn it, this is what a book club is. Jack is a heartbreaking character in the book, because he's a relatable character in a way, like where you're trying to improve on a flaw and you're aware of the flaw and you want to correct it. So he's gone through these lengths that are described on like how he's going to better himself, and he's fighting with changing himself, and then he's met with the immovable force, which is a fucking haunted, evil place that's fucking with him. So that's the hornet's nest in and of itself, where what Michael's saying, what Shane has said, like, he doesn't want to hurt his son. He did it the one time that was like rock bottom. Like that's the moment that spiraled all of the change. So why would he want to go through that again? And also he wants to regain his wife's trust. So why would he go and fuck that up again?
Right.
So he's a heartbreaking character because it's relatable. He wants to change and he wants to do better. And that's what the most of the book is about, is I think recovery. And that's what is like expanded upon in greater detail in Dr. Sleep, where
much greater detail,
where Jack failed. And I don't even think it was because I think Jack Torrance would have succeeded if the haunting and the evil presence were never encountered.
Oh, of course. Most certainly.
There's, the interesting thing, and I think the reason King is as protective of it as it is it is a very personal story for him.
Yeah.
Because he is dealing with his own addiction at the time, and he's, dressing the fact that to most addicts, and anyone who has had an addict in the family or who has suffered an addiction themselves, you understand, you feel like it is a weakness that you have. And essentially, it's like a flaw of your character, and you should be able to get by on your own. Like, you're weak-willed, and you should just be able to go. So the willingness to ask for help is a really big hurdle to get through, and anyone who talks about recovery in general knows that's the first step, is admitting you have a problem. And so the tinge that is then given to this character who understands he has a flaw and is actively trying to address it. He's just not getting help from an outside party. He thinks, if I buckle down and I focus on the good things, I can continue to be good. And he falls short of the goal time and time again. And whether it's, not being as excellent as a writer as he thought he was going to be, and just sort of constantly tripping at the hurdles is a problem. What Kubrick then does is he subverts that entirely, and he just makes the Jack Torrance character a very driven and maniacal and egocentric individual. So it removes all of your attachment to him as a person and a flawed character, and you're like, oh, he's just the thing that sprung to mind. And whatever you feel about him as a comic is different than what you feel of him as a person, because the allegations and all the other things we've learned about Bill Cosby is he's not a very redeemable human being, if we're to believe all these things. But he had a really great joke about cocaine. Where an individual, he talks about, what does cocaine do for you? Like, why do you take it? And he goes, well, it intensifies your personality. And the punchline to the joke is, well, what if you're an asshole? And that's kind of the idea that you get from the alcoholism, is that Jack Torrance as a man is a dramatically different person than when he gets a couple belts of scotch in him. And then the hotel essentially just is the ersatz intoxicant, basically. It just swaps out one vice for another. And so his ego does fall into the mix. And there are things that sort of get leavened in over the course of the story. Whereas from the moment he walks on screen, he's kind of a prick in the movie and continues to be. And he has moments where he's on the verge of being somewhat, touching and emotionally connected to his wife and child, but he's not. So to King, watching that character kind of be bastardized on film, I can understand why it would be problematic for him. Sorry for a long-winded explanation.
No, you're good. Because I just got to the morning of December 2nd, I believe. So I'm like right at pretty much the climax of the book. Mm-hmm. I do see a lot of parallels with movie Jack and the Jack that sabotages the snowmobile, mm-hmm. where he envisions himself, the writer that wrote for Esquire, having to shovel yard or backyards, front yards, whatever, driveways, and all these other things, or having to drive to California and start anew there. And that is his major driving force to, I'm not going to let us leave, even though something attacked my son.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a lot of the driving force behind the movie Jack, where we don't get to see his fall from grace, if you will. Mm-hmm. We just see the end result of that, because Jack becomes more driven, though if this occurred earlier on in the winter or in the fall, he might be more driven towards finishing his book instead of giving up on that and more dedicating himself to the actual hotel. Because that's pretty much kind of what he does, is that he believes that if he gets through the hotel, if he sacrifices everything else and completes the hotel job, then he can use this as a driving point. He can write that hotel book, damn the consequences there, and then move on and be able to become a great writer, because at this point he's already given up on writing the book the play, right.
It's a shot at redemption for him, and that's really what he feels like he would have to sacrifice, is that he would cease to be the great writer and just be the father and the husband. And that's not an indictment, unfortunately, as, for those who sit around. It's like, that's not the worst possible thing that you could be. But the ego is driving that. It's like, I'm better than this. I'm meant for better things. And that also gets expanded upon in Dr. Sleep, and why he had an extramarital affair, and all the other little things that kind of get wrapped up into this melange of what is Jack Torrance as a character, which is why I really love both aspects and why the book's great, and I love the movie as well. There are a lot of things that you can get wrapped up in, and we could do this for another hour and a half very easily, just based on the fact that all three of us really appreciate it and like kind of the nuances.
I do think I have an out for us, though.
Give it.
Okay.
It's Stephen King related, and I don't recall if I have shared this before. But are either of you familiar with Rose Red?
I have not read the book, no.
Neither
Michael?
have I.
Okay. So Rose Red, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this era of time, and it was way ahead of its time. Limited series run, so it's like, the original It, The Shining. There's another one that was very mythical.
Isn't that a
10th
show?
Kingdom.
Isn't that a show that he co-authored, or he wrote the entire show
Yeah,
himself?
so I remember. So Rose Red, let's see here, it came out in 2002. And I remember watching it around or with my family, and it just scaring the shit out of me. I just didn't know any better, I don't think. Like, it was tiptoeing into horror. But I thought about it recently because it really, like, with Bly Manor coming around again, or coming around, and then Hill House, I was thinking about Rose Red because it's definitely a haunted house, Shining-esque kind of thing. So this is just first couple sentences in the wiki for it.
Okay.
And it makes so much sense. So, originally conceived as a feature film, writer Stephen King pitched the idea for Rose Red to Spielberg in '96, envisioning it as a loose remake of Robert Wise's 1963 film, The Haunting, which itself was based on Shirley Jackson's '59 novel, The Haunting of Hill House. So, yeah, that is tangentially related. There's also King. It is King. I didn't know it at the time, because why would I? But King wrote the script for Rose Red. It has been dragged through the mud because it is hot fucking garbage. But if you can snag, like if you're at Zia or your local like buy trade sell kind of record shop or a thing like that, and you find a copy, just pick it up. It'll probably be fun for a once over just for the sake of tearing it apart. But you will see all the influence of things that I guarantee you like now.
Okay. I also, to have something that is tangentially related to what we've been talking about today, it's something I alluded to and I got semi-called out for in the comments, because when I guested with the horror show, when we were at last year's Fan Fusion and they had me on for their Stephen King discussion. One of the first Stephen King books that I read as I was ascending into consciousness, I do point out that The Stand is kind of the one that really got me.
Yeah, you said that on air,
again.
I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Yeah,
when
you
I
said
was
that you read that when you were very young.
Well, no, I read it when I was a senior in high school. It was something that
bad.
I was working on because we had to do book reports in my senior year as well. And I wrote a song for the book report because it was an easy out as an artist. You can go through like, I wrote this and it's inspired by, and I still, I'd read the book, I assimilated the material.
Do you have that song still?
I mean, I'm fairly certain that it was something that I just kind of loose fit a song I was already working on and just kind of bent it enough in the narrative.
Damn,
We've talked about this.
I was going to say
that would have been really cool.
If you had it, we should just plug it at the end of the show. It'd be so good.
Yeah, I would have loved to just end on that.
I mean, it is on my first record. I think the song is called Never Glow. This is like first record, the one I put out in 2000. So I'm not sure anyone's heard that but me, other than the 17 people that had it when I was in high school. Long story short, too late. The concept of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, which we've talked about, is a young girl gets lost in the woods and she helps herself to kind of escape the woods by using her Walkman and listening to baseball games where her favorite baseball player, Tom Gordon, was playing. And so she kind of manifests him as a Sherpa and imagines having conversations with Tom Gordon to help her, one, not lose her mind and be totally just lost in her fear. And he kind of helps guide her out of the woods. The entire time as she's walking through the forest, however, she's being stalked by this sort of nameless malice. And it's this sort of spectral hatred that you hear about, and King talks about it in very vague details, but also just sort of describing it as this weird, shapeless sort of entity that is just pure hatred. And it manifests itself, spoilers, at the end of the book, coming out of the woods as a giant bear and kind of morphs into this bear. So in my reading it, when I had also read through Pet Sematary and everything, I was like, this is another iteration of the Wendigo to me. It feels like something, again, that shifts its shape, that is not necessarily one thing at all times. And, of course, it's stalking this person, sort of siphoning its fear and, the idea that it's going to die and a lot of the trepidation surrounding that. And that's kind of what's fueling it. And so I always assumed, to me, that was a parallel that was running. And somebody's like, it wasn't the Wendigo in that story. It's like, well, he doesn't name it that, but to me, it's the closest correlative I had to a familiar concept. And since he already had gone into great detail and depths when writing Pet Sematary, I thought this feels very much to me like another, since we know, the King universe is interconnected, as John will find out. It's something that I felt harkened back to the other story and could sort of take place in the same universe. And so that's me putting myself on blast for saying that people have indicated that I'm wrong in that, but that's my perspective. So for the Wendigo, if you want a see also, you can delve into The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. It's a very fun book. It's a good read, worth spending some time with.
To circle back to Michael's topic today, I think the Wendigo has a lot more like see alsos to Kurt from you.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah. That we could, than we even realized. So you have your recommendation. Michael and I already touched on
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn, which is a lot of fun. Shane, if it's on sale, I would, and if you don't already have it, I would definitely recommend playing it. And maybe because it's kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing.
Oh, it is.
Seeing if Melissa can handle it.
They do have, I believe,
like
there is a co-op feature for it.
Handle you playing it, like watching you play, because it's very cinematic. It's almost exclusively meant to be viewed as like a movie that you're in control of.
It's a quick time event, sort of choose your own adventure-esque thing. Where
I think you can bang it out in like 6 hours total.
Something like that. Well, I mean, it depends on how fast or if you want to get people killed, because you can make the game very short if you purposely because characters can die or they can live. So your actions can decide whether or not these characters die or
do you think Melissa could handle a proper
You underestimate my power.
Yeah, that's probably pushing it for
she does not like anything that is unnerving. It's not like one of those where I'll casually dip my toe in the water. No, it is anathema to her. She wants nothing to do with it. I think
it's like me telling Becky she needs to rewatch Tusk, where I think she would rather get a divorce than watch that movie again.
Yeah, I think Melissa has her own, Halloween watches. She enjoys seasonal films as much as all of us. Hocus Pocus is one. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. The closest I think she gets to anything is Escape from Witch Mountain and The Watcher in the Woods. So
I don't know
Disney films. Is as spooky
what about
as she
Halloween
gets.
Town? Yeah.
I don't have any frame of reference for that. So yeah,
drop Halloween Town on her and see what she says. I guarantee she fucking loves it.
Yeah, she is not one of those folks like me who can sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to watch the prequel to The Thing and then John Carpenter's The Thing in a back-to-back setting. Was the remake
technically a prequel?
Yes, the remake essentially sets up everything that happens in the next film, if you're not familiar.
I've never watched John Carpenter's, but I have watched the prequel.
It's
on my list. It's on Shudder. So I'm gonna do it.
I'm gonna disown you as a friend if you do not watch that by the end of this month, because it is top 5 100%. Greatest horror films ever, no question. Oof. Carpenter says it's his best film.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've never had an aversion to watching it. I just never. I think I've seen bits and pieces, but I've never had a dedicated sit down one sitting thing. So I'll do that.
As we herald, An American Werewolf in London for the creature effects and what they do, what happens in that I have a giant compendium art book right here of material from The Thing, which I will pull down once we're off of this episode and show you, gents. But it's people doing their own takes on certain scenes from the film and redoing the film posters and things. I got it at FanFusion. Really phenomenal.
I think you actually have shown me that in IRL, as the children would say.
Indeed. I think you glanced at it, but me assuming that you knew what it was, referencing or depicting. I actually also have a thing, little maquette that Melissa gave me for my birthday last year as well, sitting on a thing here. So I'm a fan. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool appreciator.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think that has certainly put the final nail in the coffin for this week's spoopy episode.
Yes.
And next week, we want everyone to be very excited because for the penultimate installment in the Halloween saga. We are going to go down the rabbit hole of one of the most ghastly films that has ever been set to celluloid, and that is Deathbed, the Bed That Eats. And I guarantee you, one, we're going to include a link because this thing is on YouTube. I do not know how it has managed to stay there. It may not still be there by the time we make it through, but if we can, I might try to force you gents to sit and watch this with me once we get through the episode, because it bears a viewing for as horror, and it's only probably like an hour and 15. It's not a very long film, but holy Moses. The word bazooms is going to come up in the course of our discussion, and I cannot wait to get you gents there.
I love it.
Sold, absolutely sold.
I have one for you guys as well.
Ooh, give it.
Maybe I'll save it. Well, they made a shitty movie from the original short film, but it's Lights Out. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the original short film. I think it's only like 5 minutes long or less.
I have not.
But fucking super, super creepy. Like, first time I ever saw it, it legitimately, like, stuck with me like the first time I ever saw one of those shitty jump scare videos.
Okay.
That we talked about last week, I think. So it'd be fun. It'd be fun to watch that together on next week's episode. If I wrote a note, maybe I'll throw it on the whiteboard too.
Okay.
To remind us maybe to do that on air next week.
All right.
I fucking forgot. Oh, I also forgot this week to follow up on the 1-sentence horror stories. It's actually 2-sentence horror stories.
Oh,
But I think what I will do instead, if it pleases you, is do it on After Dark this week.
Oh, yeah.
I'll pop you a couple 2-sentence horror stories before we hit the hypothetical.
Another interesting After Dark thing that we might dip our toe into as well. I had begun formulating in the air of the Magnus Archives. I was going to start doing my own horror podcast where I was going to write weekly installments and then eventually encourage other people to send me their material to read. But it was going to be called listener or either listener or viewer mail, depending upon how it eventually manifested. And I have the entire first episode done. It written out and prepped, so I can.
We could do that for an After Dark.
We could, if we ever want to. It's basically just a giant monologue. If you've never heard the Magnus Archives, it's kind of just one person reading a person's statement. But the intro, I think, is fun just in and of itself. We don't have to do the full story, but the idea is it is a gentleman who is doing like a weekly show, and he goes by the hot handle of Podcaster Marin. For the Exorcist fans
Spicy.
out there, and I'm fond of it.
Well, how about? Sorry that you hear the pen click there.
Let me pencil you in.
Let's for the final After Dark of the month, which that means that will drop on 10:30.
Ooh.
And for everyone who is playing the home game here, we do a YouTube companion show called Disinformed After Dark.
Good
Shane
segue.
usually does this plug. Yeah, and it drops 10 a.m. every Friday. It's what we do while our files compress. We just kind of shoot the shit, and we explore Chuck Klosterman's hypotheticals that Shane has gloriously curated for us, and I've stepped all over his pitch for this, and this is the first time I've ever done it, but I just feel like it would have been impolite to hand it over to him if I was the one suggesting that we change the format. But on October 30th, I think we should do your version of the Magnus Archives, or your horror-inspired monologue, if you will.
It would be an exceptionally long After Dark if we did it that way.
I am pretty fucking down to do that, though.
Okay.
So
The only thing I want to add to that is, Shane, when does it air?
It airs 10 a.m. every Friday, Mountain Time.
That's
why you're shaking your head. Yes, Michael was about to jump out of his pants if you didn't say it, and you didn't. So he's now no longer wearing any skivvies.
Completely nude.
Here I was
and
like,
I will
Shane,
be for the After
I was
Dark.
like, Daddy, I'm trying. Why are you mad? It's because I didn't do it correctly. It's not because I did it. It's because I didn't do it correctly.
It's
He's not
inconveniently
mad.
audited.
He's just disappointed.
That, we have to have continuity here, my friend. If there's anything that we have taught over the course of, this year of podcasting together, we need our little bits. We need our Sigourney segues to live.
Which, hey, another cheers to you guys. We are really doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, doing a fantastic job of keeping this thing afloat while not being in the same fucking room anymore. So,
Amen.
It is possible. And yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. This has been a good little decompress from the suck.
Keep this going as long as possible, since Michael is just going to die a slow and dismal death. I was talking about this with Sam. She came over and we did a little writing this week. And she was mentioning how there's a lot of anxiety and things going on with her returning to work. And I said, the only thing really keeping me afloat, other than a marvelous woman who loves me, who I spend the bulk of my waking existence with, and that's a quick shout out. Oh, Melissa. And we can all do this, I'm sure. But, I told Sam, I said that doing the podcast has been the greatest free therapy. Well, not technically free, but mostly free therapy that I have ever had. Simply just because we get to, air our laundry, still keep the human contact here, and we entertain each other, which is ultimately what we're here to do. And we want to entertain you as well, and hopefully we're doing so.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
And the numbers are, we don't really put that much time into, promotion or anything like that. And
No.
Thankfully, you guys keep listening, which is a really, really heartening thing to see every Monday or Tuesday when I log in and see our analytics. I'm like, how? What are you doing with your time? Do
Shane
something
is so
better. Learn a new
offensive.
skill. Just
Stop trying to talk people out of our podcast, gentlemen. I do that enough just by opening my mouth. We don't need to make it any worse.
Hey,
They come for the offensive-ness of Shane, and they stay for my
sweet naivete. Yeah.
Yes, sure.
That's you're a poet, and you weren't even really aware of that actuality.
Yes. Amen.
I shared a meme with Asher. And
Gasp.
It was, life is a lot like Dead by Daylight. I don't want to play Dead by Daylight.
It's reasonable.
And he sent me back. This is what I woke up to. Some people wake up to nice texts, and I wake up to this meme.
Woke up like
and
this.
It's a picture of Confucius, and the top says, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am," and they removed the C, so it just says hanging myself. Instead of changing, it's hanging.
That's an Asher joke.
Okay, I get that joke now. Okay,
putting the C back in, or damn it, I stepped on the joke.
Putting the end
back in cuts. Yes. If you are enjoying what you're hearing here, folks, and we haven't just totally browbeaten you into inexistence or blasted you into powder, you can find us on all the social networks that you use frequently or infrequently or not at all if you're Michael. So on Instagram.com, we are at Disinformed Podcast. On Facebook.com, we are at Disinformed Podcast. Well, Facebook.com/Disinformed Podcast. And on Twitter, you can find us at Disinformed Pod. Not to mention that every single freaking Friday, you can find us 10 a.m. Mountain Time on the Tubes of You for Disinformed After Dark, and coming soon. Not John, but we will be debuting or debuting, to crib from Michael, the Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miraculous.
Miraculous, yes.
Miraculous, I like that.
And we will probably be throwing that up on the Tubes of You as well. That will likely be our Wednesday installment. So you can see us 3 times a week, just like, your therapist, I suppose, if you're really gung-ho.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Use us in the way we use each other as cum dumpsters and free therapy.
I was going to say, you got to add something more than just
Shane's
therapy.
School of Cum Dumpsters and Free Therapy.
Yes, indeed. Cunnilingus and cum dumpstery. Yes, that is what we're at here. Well,
and that's a clip, Michael.
Yes. So, for all of you fun folks and disinformants hanging out at home, thank you for being here. If you do us the favor of coming back, we'll do you the favor of continuing to record this bloody nonsense. So for Disinformed Podcast number 1,970,000, I'm Shane.
I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
I was about to say, thanks for coming, kids. Don't worry, we'll clean it up. But don't worry.
So, season 1.
So long, and good night.
So come and good night.
Baby on rooftop. Baby on wall. You next season. Baby on walls.
Go get in your Winnebago, you fuck.